To commentate or not to commentate? That is the casting question. We're going to find out today on episode 9 of Inside the Scene. Hit it, Tara. Oh, did he hit it?
I think he hit it before we started. he double hit it.
One day, Tara. One day.
Yay.
Oh wow! Well, welcome to Inside.
It's a good intro.
Oh my gosh! You know what? This is actually my favorite part of the show, where we muddle through the idea of getting the intro right. I am your host, Drekken, and I'm joined with the uninterrupted Endersword. How are you?
I'm pretty good. And you're right. You didn't interrupt any of that. Good job.
Right? And didn't get a double intro or anything.
Nothing like that. But we did get 5 subs going on the stream there.
Yeah, shout out.
Way to go, Laser.
Laser
Sec. SEQ.
Okay, yeah, Laser SEQ. Maybe. For that big sub, setting up the things for the show. Welcome, guys, to Inside the Scene, the show where welcome the show about people with passion and what they can do in this little scene we call StarCraft. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be, I think, a favorite topic today to go into, because I think we've been kind of on a roll the last couple of episodes and the type of topics we've been hitting and just the general response to where the show has been going. We've been really digging behind the seedy underbelly of StarCraft. And not so seedy.
I also think we're great.
I think we had like a comment
if that's what your point was. Yeah.
We had a comment on Reddit where it's like, smart guys, smart community or something like that. I was like, good job.
That was our elaborate marketing discussion last week.
Oh my God. Yeah. Actually, I really liked that episode. That was really fun.
Yeah.
But before we get into our guests, let's start off with the question of the day. All right, guys, you know how this works for question of the day? I ask you the question, you let us know the answer, your answer, in the chat. All right, here we go. Are we ready? Question of the day. Favorite European player in StarCraft history. That includes Brood War and StarCraft 2. Endersword, what is your favorite European player?
So, first of all, I think most of them are trying to make us not like them. But I think clearly the friendliest one and the nicest one of all time is TLO. He is, in fact, so nice that he had to move to Canada. It's like, in his country, they're like, you're too nice to be here. You're going to have to go to a nicer country. And so we brought him over here. That's my StarCraft. I don't know. I haven't checked his documents, but he's here. He's here. He's around. I don't know if this is where he's living full time, but he's here. And if I could go, I didn't know until you said like could be from Brood War or this or that, but the other one that would be my favorite of all time would be Grubby.
Oh, I hate when you choose the person I wanted to say, because Grubby is my favorite because of his Warcraft 3 days. He was actually the player I looked up to the most, because he was him and the Four Kings. Like the Four Kings was the clan he was in. That was like, it was considered like the gods of anything that wasn't Korean, like the non-Korean Warcraft 3 players, and that was like my original scene. So Grubby was it. So I'm going to choose somebody else. I'm going to say White Raw. White Raw is my favorite.
White Raw's. Now, you might dispute whether he's technically in Europe or whether he's on the other side of the Ural Mountains. I don't know where he lives. Exactly, but he might be Asian. I'm not sure. Is he Ukrainian? Okay, then he's.
That still counts as Europe now, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's European. Yeah, you have to go a bit into Russia to get over. I wasn't sure where he was. The other super nice one is Todd. Todd's also incredibly nice. Yeah. But I don't know. He might, obviously he counts more as a caster now, but if we're counting old games, he's obviously Warcraft.
It's all in history. So we can
Warcraft 3 legend. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of any brutal or particular Europeans that comes to mind. So I can't really say. There was one who used to be back in the old days, but I can't remember the name of him for the life of me. So I'm gonna go with White Raw, so I don't look like I can't think of anyone. Yeah. But yeah, White Raw, 100%.
Yeah, that's good. We came up with a number of answers. Usually the question to what is your favorite European is pass. Yeah, try again. But yeah, no, good. Definitely some good folks out there. Strong region.
Yeah. Okay, so normally, guys, we generally have different segments for you guys to go over before we get into our guests and into our main discussion for the day. But due to technical difficulties, our segments will not be available in this episode. So episode 10, I promise you, we'll make it up to you. I had a really good back in the day, and I'm very sad that we weren't able to show it, but we'll make it up to you. In the meantime, to compensate for that, Endersword will do a dance for everybody on stream. No, in all seriousness. So today, before we guys get into it, we have a discussion on casting and commentating. The idea of what does it take in StarCraft to go from amateur commentator to premier commentator. And we have, very fortunately, 3 premier commentators. Endersword, from you've had a run-in with being a caster and going through the ropes of going in, you've casted a lot of our local Toronto lands for yourself. What are you hoping that we're going to get from some of this conversation?
I think biggest things are like kind of what the step up is of going between the amateur to then hitting kind of a pro level, what that transition is like, actually making it your real career and everything. And also some of the, I guess, feedback and like support and anti-support that they get from community and things like that. Just how do you actually design your life around it? Like obviously what I've done it's a hobby. Like I've got my normal full-time job and then we do this sometimes. But what is it like to really make StarCraft your life as a commentator? What's the experience? Pitfalls, exhilarating moments, etc.
I'm hoping we can get
I know.
I'm hoping we can get a peek at some of the things that people would not normally have to face, like in terms of negotiating. And we even had that kind of situation in our discussion in the female casting. But let's bring on our guests and let's have them give us the rundown on what's going on. So to introduce our guests, I'm assuming they're going to be up on the screen because I can't see. ZombieGrub, Maynarde and Feardragon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the show.
Hello.
Maynarde is just an image due to lack of camera, but
letting you guys out there know that the whole reason, I think it's not entirely my fault, but definitely the reason why we're late is mine. I realized today that my webcam has shut itself. Pardon my French. And now
it's fine.
I can swear on this?
Yeah, you can totally swear.
Shit webcam died in the ass, and now I have to throw it in the bin and set it the fuck on fire and set it back in the 7th circle, tell it where it belongs. And I will go and get a new webcam today. And hopefully this never happens again. Or I will
you said you can swear, really not curse on this. Sounds like you're inciting some sort of curse.
No, it's fine. We're all sailors here, all right?
I'm going to warn further webcams by putting this webcam up. I'm going to put its charred remains, after I set it on fire and sacrifice it, and put its charred remains on a stick at the end of my desk to warn further webcams that dare disappoint me. Anyway. Nice segue, Maynard. Go on.
Can you actually send us a picture of that so we can use it as a thumbnail for the YouTube VOD?
Dude, it's all yours.
All right, got it. You hit it here first on the show. Commentating casting. You guys are all professional commentators and had some experience, just a little bit, just a tiny bit experience of casting StarCraft on a pro level. So first of all, it's going to be, I think, a pleasure for us to dive deep and find out what it really takes to make it big. StarCraft big. With that in mind, I'm going to start off my first question because this is something that's really been running my mind, and I want to know. We're going to go round table, and we'll start with Maynard because he's always so colorful. What caster in the casting community, so that's all games, inspires you the most?
Do you mean right now or back in the day or overall?
Overall, from time immemorial.
Okay. Well, whenever anyone talks about your big break and what transitioned you from, say, like a good caster, and I'll say like arguably a good caster to arguably a great caster, because I don't necessarily myself believe that I'm great, but a lot of people say that. The guy that really helped me out more than anything was Apollo, and he was a guy that, I mean, I started off in StarCraft 2 as being a massive fan of Tastosis, and they still are my favorites to this day as a combo. But as far as an individual caster goes, Apollo to me seemed like the full package. He really could do the hype. He was really, really knowledgeable of players and history. He did a lot of behind-the-scenes work, which to me as a commentator, I was like, oh, this is for fun, and I have a full-time job, and I do this on the side. So I never really prepped much or understood the meaning of prep other than to, play the game and know what I'm talking about for, enough to get by, basically. I wasn't putting in those extra hard yards. But Apollo, I remember the first time I ever did IM Katowice was the first time we actually had a long tournament together, because we'd done like weekend casts for IM together and that sort of thing. But we never really got the chance to sit around and talk to each other. But we had like nights at IM Katowice where he was like, we're going to level you up, dude. I'm going to come meet you in your room. I'll bring a bottle of whiskey. I'm going to bring my notepad in, and we're going to make storylines for this tournament. We're going to make it brilliant because this is the world finals and we need to bring it, both of us.
Wow.
And I learned, I honestly, like I tell people, I learned more from a weekend with him than I did a year freestyling on my own, just doing lots and lots of events and just doing my own thing. I learned a little bit just from experience, and do this, don't do that. People like this, people don't like that. But with Apollo, a couple nights together, just in the hotel room, doing notes and going over stories and players and that sort of thing, I really, really felt like a massive improvement in just my ability to do a lot of things that I wasn't able to do as a commentator before that weekend. And he also taught me a lot, about introducing, like how to, even camera work was something that he taught me how to do. Like when the camera comes back to you, you would always say, "G'day guys, I'm blah, 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 blah." But he was like, come back with something dramatic. Like the camera comes back, you're live, the red light's on, you say, this is the semifinals. One player is going to move on and the other one is going to go down. This is his last chance. That sort of introduction. I learned how to do that. The list goes on. So the short story is Apollo is the guy for me. He really, really leveled me up. Miss him greatly. I think was the greatest that we had. But he does so much work behind the scenes, and IM is still kicking with StarCraft 2. So still pleased that I get to see him at events.
I told him there's some things I'm going to pick apart in questions, but I want to make sure I get everybody's response. I'm going to put a pin, virtual pin in that, and come back to that. Man, I have a ton of questions. Jess, what caster, past, present, or future, do you admire?
Future would be the most impressive answer.
Yeah. This is one guy that's like one gear right now. He's telling you. Artosis is always my go-to, just like casting like idol, who I was gonna try and replicate, who I thought I could be, like kind of, because there's always like this. There was a big part where I was like, trying to figure out like, oh, I guess I am an analyst, and I didn't really want to be labeled. There we go, labeled. But it was, it was truly like either you're a play-by-play guy and you can kind of get away with not being a pro gamer, or having been a pro gamer, or you're an analyst. And, if you weren't a pro gamer, then, how good of an analyst are you? And while like Artosis did a lot of Brood War pro gaming, it wasn't nearly the same level scale, and he didn't do much of StarCraft 2. I think like months basically, before he just like transitioned to full-time casting. So I always looked at him and be like, well, he can do this. He can be respected in the community and be a really smart guy and not be literally grandmaster all 3 races. So, he helped me in a lot of ways. Not just like he wasn't a direct influence like Apollo was to Maynard, but yeah, he's the guy I looked to.
Did you ever have like a mentor figure similar to Apollo?
No. I was like, wait, did I? And I was like, oh no.
All right, Feardragon. Who's the person that inspired you?
I think it'd be a toss-up for me between Total Biscuit and Day 9. For me, Total Biscuit, like, he's been my favorite commentator for a very long time now. Like, I consider myself I want to be more of a play-by-play commentator. I think I'm still not great at it, but that's a lot of the stuff that Total Biscuit would do with his commentary was just really, really on point with the play-by-play. A lot of like the mannerisms and stuff that he would do with his play-by-play commentary, I tried to pick up on. I actually liked it enough that I wrote a massive like Team Liquid blog that just picked apart his casting and like the things that I like about it from like 2012, 2013, something like that. So Total Biscuit
still up. Probably still around. So that blog is probably still around. Huh?
Yeah, I think it's like got a super duper stupid title, like Biscuits of Totality or something.
God damn it, really.
sounds right.
But yeah, so Total Biscuit is probably the big one, and then Day 9 is just another big one, just because I think I kind of grew up on Day 9 in terms of StarCraft, Brood War, and StarCraft 2.
All right. Dave, you want to lead something before I jump into my question with the...
Did you want to follow up your little pin?
Yeah, I'm going to... You know what? Let's pull the pin right now.
Pull your pin.
Pull my pin. All right. So, Maynard, you mentioned, you spoke with Apollo and he kind of picked it apart. Was there a back and forth in terms of reviewing your casting and sort of going in depth? I'm trying to get a sense of how deep did that kind of level up happen? Like, did you guys look at past videos?
No. We didn't go over past videos, but it was like it was the first time I ever had. Oh, see you, ZombieGrub. It was the first time that I ever had like a professional give me honest feedback. Like there would always be like a person in Twitch chat or someone in the community that gives you their opinion, and generally always positive. Like at the time, because I was an up and coming caster. So okay, there's just to take a step away from this small tangent. There is a diagram that's consistent for all new commentators. All right. So at the time, I was new on the scene. A lot of people hadn't seen me before. Like I did stuff 2 years ago, but I took a big hiatus in 2014 and only really came back to it at the beginning of 2015 for IM Taipei, and then Katowice that year was the year that I'm talking about with Apollo. But there's a diagram. When you splash on the scene, everyone loves you. All right. And then it starts to dip. You get you go towards people realizing that they don't like you that much. And then there's the people that still like you, that fight for you. And then there's arguments. Every time someone says, I think this cast is trash, those threads start to pop up. The appreciation threads start to go away. The I think this person is overrated threads start to pop up. And then it starts to plateau to where I'd say a lot of us are now, where no one really cares. You just do your job. And if you do your job and you're not getting any threads, then that's good. Because threads are bad.
That's a sign. That's a sign.
Threads are bad. Yes. Whether they're praise this caster or shout out to this caster or this caster really needs to be replaced. Either way, this threads generally lead to bad times. Anyway, back off tangent. So it was the first time I was ever having a professional commentator give me live feedback. And by that, I mean we were doing a series or even between games when we were muted. He would take one ear off of his headset, I'd take one ear off of mine, and he'd turn to me and he'd say, so what we're going to like, he's like, what we just did right then, this is how we're going to change it. Like he would talk to me about what I said right and what I said wrong. If I messed up, he would bring it up and even give me pointers on game knowledge. Because at the time at the time, I should say, it's, to be fair, probably still the case to this day in 2018. I only really knew Terran stuff. The Zerg stuff and the Protoss stuff especially was a huge conundrum to me. So he would actually tell me about in-game things that I need to look out for as a play-by-play guy in the early stages for the other races that I honestly didn't know as well back in 2015. And he would tell me that in between games, as well as tell me like, hey, great job with that enunciation, but you're umming and ahhing a little bit too much here and there. Just he'd say stuff like, take your time, breathe. It's better to say nothing than like stuff like that, like little small things like that in between casting, because it's fucking Apollo. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to listen to everything he said. I'm 100% locked into everything he said. Everything he took on, I took on 100%. And I wouldn't argue. It was, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jump, how high, 3 bags full, etc. Everything he wanted. So, and it ended up with me actually doing the final of that event because the ESL guys, the community, they all were like, God damn, this kid is good. Put him on the big stage. And that's what happened that year as well. So, and that's, again, that the live feedback and the outside of work feedback, so the stuff when we're just having drinks and dinner afterwards, was the most work I've ever done as a commentator, but it really, really showed. Like I could feel it. I felt the difference between, I don't know if you've ever like, I'm sure everyone has in their life, but when you've really nailed something, like when you feel like you really nailed it and you're just like, damn, that felt good. Like that was the first time I felt that after like a bunch of casts. Yeah.
So was that your first like finals cast too? It was like on the big stage?
Oh, yes, actually, it was my first big stage finals. Definitely.
Cool. So talking about balancing a little bit skill in the game and what's required to be a caster, I would always wondered, would you rather be kind of at your current level as a WCS level caster, or would you rather be a consistent round of 16, round of 32 player? So not like a top player, but would you rather be someone that was consistently making it to like a final group?
So if it was like a Bly or a U-Thermal or something, you mean like one of those guys?
Yeah.
But I'd have to give up being a WCS commentator, you say?
Yeah. Maybe you could talk on a desk after you get knocked out, but that's it. And you could sing karaoke at Homestar. Yeah, you could sing karaoke at Homestar Cup, but you couldn't commentate anymore.
Is there karaoke at Homestar Cup? It wasn't when I went, but anyway, I would say no. I would rather do what I do now.
That question I'm curious to know from Ravi and Jess.
Too complicated because there's no, you can't just say like, you're a caster or a player, because for me, my body is literally like breaking down on me like as we speak, and it always has been. So like I imagine like, okay, somehow I'm making round of 16s consistently. Am I dying the entire time? Because my neck is just like, I'm slowly doing this. Like that doesn't sound very fun. So
you don't have neck or hands pain, but you are on Adderall all the
time. Good clarification.
I don't know. I wanted to be a player when I first started out. And I feel like the prestige goes more to the players. The memories go more to the players. The 6 cinematics go more to the players. But I think I'm good at what I do, and I just cannot see myself actually be consistently good at being a player.
Where yourself,
Ravi? Have you ever wanted to be good?
Yeah, there's like a weird thing that I think about a lot in regards to commentating versus playing. And it's sort of just this idea, like I think there's something really cool and beautiful, and it's like draws to esports and StarCraft and all that stuff, where like if you're good, that's all that kind of matters. And like ultimately the game is unbiased on like who you are or whatever. So you feel like whatever you actually, if you're winning, then you actually earn that win. Just like in some way, shape, or form, you've like deserved that win. You can't really like question it. It's not like because your parents were rich or you got lucky or something like that. It's like, no, you won that because you worked hard, blah, blah, blah. Commentary can sometimes be a little bit more ambiguous and like arbitrary. So, and it's like, it's not exactly as like specific to commentary. I think it's true for just a lot of jobs and stuff. Like I know a lot of people, like you can get lucky with an interview process or something. You find someone that you get along with like StarCraft and playing StarCraft. There's something really cool about that. So I actually really like that aspect of StarCraft. And if I could be a player and really have like that kind of success and know that it really truly came from me, that I think that is really cool. So I think from that perspective, I prefer it. But again, it goes back to what Jess was saying. Like, am I full-time as a pro player that's getting around to 16 stuff? Am I living off of like $10,000 a year? Because that doesn't sound great.
In your case, you're also simultaneously getting a communications degree. if that helps. So you got something to fall back on, but it's not very good.
Well, I mean, I'd be getting the communications degree, but where would I even use it? It's not like players ever get to do anything on stage.
That's true.
It's so true.
Heyo.
If only there was some incentive for them.
Yeah,
Finally.
only.
I'm curious. For in terms of we showed for like Maynard the idea for him doing his first finals. Jess, what was your like first finals experience?
Montreal, like literally 4 weeks ago. I mean, if you don't count Nation Wars, where we all kind of shared the finals, then Montreal was the first finals that I did. Like you wanted.
Yeah, I'd actually like to know, like, what was the? Could you tell me sort of the moments before that kind of happened? Like, were you like, did you know you're gonna do the finals, or did someone just tap you on the shoulder and like, all right, finals?
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I don't know if this is how like the guy who kind of leads us always does it, but he like privately messaged the two people that were doing, or I think he only did me honestly, because like Pig like came in and he was like, "Who's doing the finals?" And I was like, me and you.
Pig is also, to be fair, really bad at checking messages during those events.
Yeah, I guess so. So like I like saw the message and I was like, oh, that's supposed to be prestigious, I guess. There's actually this weird thing where, okay, so here's like a tangent story, or maybe we get into some of the dirty details, but there's this like weird thing where like the finals are supposed to be prestigious, and I think they are, especially if they're hype finals. I mean, feel bad for In Control and Roddy, who did Snoot Neeb last year. But
actually, I did Snoot Neeb with Nathanius.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah. I remember it because I'm like, because I was like, God damn, this finals is bad.
Actually, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
And memorable.
So, anyways, like, but like, there's this weird thing where, like, sometimes, because I remember at one point, I think, like, there's a lot of like talk in like the Montreal last year, like when Maynard was there too, so he can back me up, and I wasn't crazy. They come in maybe like, like, so who wants to do the semifinals? Who wants to do the finals? And everyone was like, and I wasn't going to say anything because I was a newbie, and everyone was just like, like, if you want to take it, like, that's, that's cool. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I really want to do ZVP. It might not be. And I'm just like, I don't know. I'll do something. Like, I won't give me the finals, but like, hey, I'll be here. But anyways, like in my mind, still, it is kind of the next step, even if the finals suck, even if the other commentators don't really seem that jazzed to get a job either. I still think it is like the next step. And it was like somewhat of a big deal to me. I sort of had like a mini, it wasn't a panic attack, but I kind of just was like, oh no, especially because me and Pig have not really done a ton. I wanted to cast with Pig, but I knew it was going to be ZVZ finals because there's no way that Time was going to win. Sorry, Time. And I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go. But luckily, Pig's really easy to cast with, and I think it was one of the best finals ever of a WCS.
Yeah, definitely.
And certainly the best CVZ I've ever had. And I just like to think that, going back to Maynard's point about like, how the people react to you and what happens. And it's like, no thread's a good thread. And no one really, the YouTube comments are a bit different, but like generally the reception was very positive, and or just no one talked about it, which is kind of what you want. It's like being I can't think of an analogy right now. I don't know. It's like being like linemen, right? They never get any of the prestige, but assuming they do their job right, then that's fine. If they do the job wrong, well, that's when they get all the shit. So
yeah, I always feel like if you're doing your job, then you don't get talked about. That if you don't get talked about, it's like you did the thing. Like you should pat yourself on the back. You have presented StarCraft adequately enough for the community.
So no news is good news.
No news is good news. I mean, to touch on like what ZombieGrub was mentioning, part of the process for that final, like there are definitely, you could probably guess who. There's a handful of commentators that when they get the finals gig, they're like, cool, all right, let's go. For me and ZombieGrub, I'm still like, even though I've done a few finals at this point for WCS, and also did like an IM Shanghai with Rotterdam, and obviously Katowice, I did once or twice as well. When you do the when I do a grand final, to me, it still feels very special. Mm-hmm. And I feel like all right, if I'm at like a 9 or a 10 out of 10, I need to be at 11 with that energy. Like, what the fuck am I saving my voice for? Time to blow it out and go ham. You know, that's my thoughts on a final. Like, when you know it's your last cast, I bring in 110% and I destroy myself in that final cast. A lot of people dislike that. A lot of people really like that. It depends on the environment. I think it like a BlizzCon or a WCS Grand Final or like an IEM World Championship. You got to bring it. You know, destroy yourself. So I cast very suicidally in that point, in that regard. But the process of picking the final is very inglorious. There's the guy who makes There's the guy who makes the decisions backstage. He walks in. He's like, okay, so
I think I can guess.
He taps me on the shoulder and he goes, Maynard, you're up. And also you will be casting with Rotterdam. Roti, Maynard, good luck and make a good show. Okay. And then I'm like, sweet. Better do my prep then. You know, and I get my notepad out and, you know, try and get ready for it. But yeah, that's basically it. There's no like red carpet. There's no fanfare, no bottle of champagne. There's no, you know, at the end of the day, there's no like, dude, you did so great on that grand final. It's just like, you know, everyone's just like, we've all done it. We've all casted. You did a good job. Let's just enjoy ourselves. You know, it's not, no one really, maybe the grand final between Reina and Sarah was talked about behind the scenes a bit because it was so incredible.
Yeah.
And, you know, I went all the way to game 7, which is pretty rare. Like that's really, really exciting and probably something you will talk about. But even like the grand finals of BlizzCon last year, when it ended, I don't even think we talked about the tournament anymore. Like, it was just like, job well done. We were just like, all right, now let's just enjoy ourselves. It wasn't like, you know, there wasn't any feedback. There wasn't any, no, even the person that chose you to do the semifinal or anything like that. It was just like, he was just like, all right, guys, good job. You know, enjoy your evening. It was like,
is there ever is that ever a pre-negotiated thing? Like, I feel when
the finals,
if they bother to get like say Artosis over, I feel like he always does the finals.
Oh, no.
Okay. Is that ever in a contract?
That is a different thing. If Tastosis are a part of the show,
they're doing
the finals.
They're doing the finals.
It doesn't take
it's not even a discussion. It's not even a discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wonder, is that just understood or is that in the contract?
No, it is understood. It is like, don't even fight it. It has been fought before.
Yeah.
Not going to say who by, but it has been fought for before. And they went down like the Hindenburg. You cannot take Tastosis off of the main stage for the grand final. Any big match, like say if we have Cyril Maru from BlizzCon this year,
they're doing it.
You think it's going to be like say if I go to BlizzCon, do you think it's going to be Maynard and Todd casting that? Nope. It's going to be Tastosis. Doesn't matter if it's a semi. Doesn't matter if it's a grand final. I hope it's a grand final. But it doesn't matter what it is. It'll be Tastosis. The big one, the big match, the big one is always them. And it's something we accept. And that's completely fine because it's just it's status quo at the moment because they are the most popular commentator duo.
Sure.
And they want to put on the best show possible in their eyes. Putting Tastosis on for the biggest match is complimenting, you know, this is the best match. Let's get the best combo. And we've accepted that they are the best combo, and that's fine. So I don't argue about it. I don't get bitter about it. Some of the other guys have. Well, actually, I think one of them have, but you know, not naming names. It's just sort of something you accept, right? And I still feel like, even though I've done a lot, I feel like kind of like the new kid on the block. I do what I'm told. I'm a good boy. I don't really make arguments. I don't really push for anything. Generally, in between days of broadcast, not really series, but days of broadcast, the caster lineup will be talked about, like backstage. And the guy that I'm talking about with the funny accent that taps you on the shoulder, like where you're doing the final, he's the guy that sort of sits back there with his MacBook Pro and says, all right, these are the series tomorrow. Who wants to do what? Maynard, I know you like Terran. You want some Terran matches, and we'll just sort of talk about it. And it's very like it's bashed out in about 30 seconds to a minute. Doesn't take very long.
So
because we're all pretty comfortable casting with each other.
With the idea of the grand final, is the grand finals kind of like a rite of passage for a commentator? Like when you've gotten your grand finals, that's like your next rung up, that's your next level.
I would say that it's a rung up. Being entrusted to present the grand final of a massive tournament like a WCS season final is definitely to me it's an honor. I mean, I know that Jeff and Rotterdam, etc., are probably like, oh, another one, here we go. But to me, it's like, woo, okay. I'm pretty excited by that. I'm sure, ZombieGrub, well, I mean, she wouldn't have anxiety about it if it didn't matter to her. So clearly it did for her as well. And to me, even as someone that's been singing her praises for a really long time, like a long time, I've been telling Blizzard to, when I've been doing OCS to get ZombieGrub on board for a long time. To me, when I saw that she was cast in the grand final, I'm like, yes, God, finally. Like they're seeing that she can do the final. Like get her up there. And yeah, I think she did a great job. I watched the final, so I was like pretty happy with that.
So I have a question for Ravi. You are like one of the newest casters around the block for yourself, and you like your premier list is Austin, Montreal, and Valencia. For you, is there a level of that you take what you can get in terms of games, or do you have to be a little bit assertive about the games that you cast? Like, how does your casting process, get picked in terms of these matches? Do you have to express a preference?
It's pretty much the same. I mean, like, I think every caster has like their own sort of like preferences that are based around different things. Like, good example, I think In Control really likes commentating Protoss games. Like, that totally makes sense. For me, I'm like, give me North American players, give me like Charlotte, Neve, like etc. So I think it really just depends on the commentator. But yeah, I pretty much go through the same process that Maynard was talking about, where like I get called over and I was like, okay, yeah, like these are the series, like which ones do you like? And I'm like, oh, I like this one, I like this one, I like this one. And he says, okay, well, this person, like, we already have 2 people on this one, so do you want to be on the desk for this segment instead? Because that's the one other thing that people don't think about as much, which is there's like 2 commentators and then 2 people on the desk for each series. So it's kind of like an interesting rotation that goes around with that as well, where it's like, especially if you have like, say, 5 casters for an event, then it'll be 2 commentators, 2 people on the desk, and then 1 person on break. So then things kind of get scheduled around like that, and they sometimes will try and even it out between like how many series you're on the desk, how many series you're commentating, and everyone gets a break at some point, usually, hopefully.
I remembered something that maybe I'll say we can talk about later, but actually it's kind of topical, so I guess I'll bring it up now.
Let's do it.
Because like we're kind of talking about like how things are chosen, right? Are you like, I was talking about those YouTube comments, right? Which I tend to avoid, but they got the better of me and I looked it up. The weirdest comment that and this is like just indicative of how many misconceptions there are. So I can't remember all of them right now, but this is just the one that I remember. But it's like one of the guys was like, ZombieGrub did much better in the like finals. Thank God. Someone must have told her after the semifinals or whatever else I did that she was doing really bad. And I was like, in a weird way, that's a compliment, I guess. But also, that's just not at all what's happened or done. And I guess I do remember before I ever did any like big events that maybe I also thought that way. Like maybe the finals were chosen because that day someone was doing really well, or that tournament someone was doing really well. And I'm not 100% sure that's the case. You'd have to ask the guy that actually chooses. But yeah, it's definitely not based off of the day, or like we don't actually get any feedback during the tournament. Yeah. And it's not just because someone's out there going like, well, yeah, because their bosses are pussies, they're doing such a terrible job. It's because if you go up to a commentator and they're like ready to go on a desk and you're like, hey, ZombieGrub, last time not so good. Could you just be a little bit better? They're gonna be like, yeah, okay. All right, yeah.
Imagine that feedback. It's like, excuse me, your last cast was bad. Could you make it like not bad? That'd be great. And like, oh, thanks. That's kind of Twitch chat feedback, by the way.
Yeah, it is. And then on that one, the thing I remembered about when Maynard telling the story is that last year's Montreal was the first time I had no idea what to expect about some things. Feardragon actually did a really good job telling me what to expect because he did Valencia first. But he didn't tell me like about the feedback after, or he didn't like specify what it was. So anyways, the guy comes over and he's like, we're going to have the feedback or breakdown, whatever. I forget what he calls it right now.
Debriefing.
Thank you. A debriefing after the day. So just stick around. And I was sitting there all like, oh, okay, so this is going to be like this is actually going to be where Big Boss comes in and says like, hey, you guys need to be blank, 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 or blank. Like, all right, this is what I've always heard could happen. And then he just comes in and he's like, good job today. Call time's 9 a.m. tomorrow. Yeah. And I'm like, what a debriefing.
And make sure no dark shirts, please. Anyone that wears a dark shirt, be in trouble with Blizzard. I don't want some. I want bright colors. Good night. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Don't stay up later.
To be honest,
yeah.
Continuing on this train, I suppose one of the things that I worked on for last year's Montreal that I think I've talked about before was like I didn't actually work on my knowledge that much. It's obviously one of the prerequisites, and I did a lot for this Montreal, but I knew it was going to be a different type of broadcast and what people actually want. Okay, maybe not everyone, of course, and maybe not every esport, because I got to tell you, Dota International was a big letdown, and apparently the Dota fans just like ate that shit up. Nothing but dull people talking about analysis. Anyways, what they really want is people having good banter, an adequate level of knowledge, and good camera presence and good storytelling. Like, and that's what I worked on the most when I was going for last year's Montreal, and that's what most of the feedback is hey, and you guys need to wear shirts that aren't this color, or don't dizzy the camera, and hey, you guys need to be really, really happy and present on the desk. And that's that. If there's any feedback, that's what we get.
But when you say, wait, hold on. When you say knowledge or working on like your knowledge, is that the knowledge of the game, the knowledge of the
Right.
tournament and caster history, like player history, like what? I just wanted to specify knowledge.
When I said knowledge, I meant of the game itself.
Okay.
Like,
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Now, you, Maynard, you mentioned that, like, basically, if there's no thread, that's usually good. Like, if you're not getting trashed, you're not getting praised, but you're not being, essentially not being noticed. But do you ever, like, one thing that I noticed that tends to come out of tournaments is more someone gets clipped or someone gets memed or something. Like, do you ever almost seek that sort of moment of that you like when you say something funny that people clip and upvote or whatever?
Honestly, I seek nothing. All I seek is to do a good job. Like I don't specifically going, "Ooh, I hope I get clipped today."
Right.
I've never done that. I've never gone, "Ooh, I hope I get a thread." "Ooh, I hope Papa Morheim gives me a biscuit for being a good boy." No, I don't think any of that. I just think I'm just gonna do my best, and I'm with a lot of really great casters, and I'm gonna try and make sure I earn my spot here, because I feel like some people say I'm not replaceable, but I feel very replaceable. And I think that if I'm not constantly doing a good job and being worthy of the money that they spend, and as an Australian, I cost a lot to be sending from Australia to wherever. Australia's not near anything. I try to be worth my while for Blizzard. So that's all I'm concerned about. There is this weird thing where I was talking about, this is a small sideline when you bring up clips. There's some people out there that actually send me clips all the time of my commentary. And then there's one guy in particular, I'm not talking about it, but there's one guy in particular that actually like clips every time I fuck up and sends it to me. And it's really weird. I've never responded to him once. Never once have I gone, bitten the bait and gone, dude, what the hell? I just like, oh, here it is again. So yeah.
Does that make you self-conscious at all? Like,
I mean, I am self-conscious about some things in my casting, but the things that he brings up aren't things that I get concerned about. It's more like me getting caught in the heat of the moment and like saying something dumb. Right. That's a pretty minor rarity for me, considering the amount of words that you say in every broadcast. Messing up one or two words is completely acceptable.
Yeah.
If you're messing up all the time, then it's really obvious. But if you mess up one or two words, it's not generally noticed. Like there'll be someone in Twitch chat that does a Dan's game or a what base, and then they'll move on because there's still so much more to say. It's never really brought up again.
So the idea of feedback has come up a bunch of times. So if you don't really get it a lot from producers, you don't really get it from certain commentators, where is the primary source of feedback that you use? And I'm curious, I want to start with Ravi. I want to know from Ravi because
honestly, it's just YouTube comments, because YouTube comments are probably the best.
Serious?
Oh, God, hurt my throat. Oh, Ravi.
Oh my God.
No, I think for me, it's mostly just like rewatching my own stuff, because like I think this is like a whole other tangent that I could probably talk for about an hour on, and I won't, don't worry. But it's like there is this idea for a lot of people, in like a lot of viewers and stuff, that they have their ideal type of commentator. And I think people, even a lot of intelligent people or like reasonable people, will say like, yeah, and I don't have to like every single commentator. But then like taking that a little bit further, not every commentator has to appeal to the majority either. So
Yeah.
there can be commentators that actually just hit on a niche. So it's really important. What is the commentator's intention? Like, what kind of audience are they trying to target? So I think every commentator needs to have some idea of what exactly they want to be. What do they think their commentating style should be appealing to? And then kind of owning that. So ultimately, you kind of have to use yourself as a bit of a judgment scale of like, you watch your commentary and it's like, okay, am I achieving the goals of the things that I'm setting out to do? So for example, if I'm like, for example, doing a challenger broadcast with In Control. In Control is really funny. I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but he's really funny. I am not
a bit of a bully.
like In Control. So my objectives are very different from his. We'll try and find a way to like meet at a middle ground and like mesh, but my commentary style, my objectives are going to be very different than Jeff's. I'll do things like try and focus a little more on the players and talk more about their history so that I kind of like humanize them or things like that. Jeff is really freaking funny, so he's going to bring a lot more humor to the broadcast and stuff. But like, it's okay that they're going in different directions. But when I watch my own stuff, I'm not just sitting there thinking like, oh man, so how do I do like these 500 IQ jokes that Jeff is doing? Like, no, that's not my objective. And recognizing that means that I can make that kind of feedback, or I can create that feedback for myself. But a lot of the time when other people are providing feedback, a lot of that feedback comes from a place of, well, I really like In Control's commentary style. So my feedback to you is to do more of what In Control is doing. And it's like, oh, that's not quite what I'm even trying to go for. That's not like what my style is about. So that's what makes it kind of hard to draw from other people. I think if you talk with other, like if I talk with like ZombieGrub or Maynarde or something, and like they know what my objectives are, then their kind of feedback would be a lot more useful for me because they actually know what I'm trying to go for. And it's not like having to wade through the pools of shit, like shit feedback of people just not actually understanding what I'm trying to go for, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, that I wasn't expecting that level of direction in terms of how you view it, and you set yourself like a goal and you keep towards that goal and use that kind of constructive feedback by the people who matter, quote unquote, right? In that regard. So
for me, a lot of it is just like it's because commentary is such an ambiguous and arbitrary thing that like it's like in StarCraft, you have this, I was talking about this before, right? Where in StarCraft, like if you win, that is ultimately like that's a success. With casting, you can do an event and you don't really have like I won this event or I lost this event. So there's no binary like measure that you can be like, all right, I'm in the right direction or something. You kind of have
tweeted about this recently.
Yeah, you have like some general feedback, but it's like not actually like a binary, this was good, this was bad thing. So you're a lot of the time, if like there's not a lot of structure that comes from that, you can't really just like try things and be like, okay, did this work based on that binary measure? You kind of have to create your own structure, I think. And that's where a lot of that thought process for me comes from.
Okay. Jess, what is like your feedback then? Is it also YouTube comments?
Yeah, totally, man. No, it's one of those things where I feel like I do a fairly decent job like self-analyzing after series, but you really can't self-analyze like camera presence. You have to actually watch yourself, which is the worst thing in the world. So it's sometimes watching or listening to yourself. Just in general, I have so much practice casting, and that's one of the weird things that I won't like dig deep into because it's not really worth it. But like a lot of other casters in the scene don't cast every single day. Even I don't anymore, but I still probably cast the most frequently. I don't know if that's true, but I think it is. Maybe Feardragon would have had me tied if he's doing more ladder heroes nowadays, but he's not even doing that much. So I get to constantly just have like really dumb things, but it's in front of like 1,000 people instead of 30,000 people. So it's like, I feel for me, it's more like practice, learning through practice and trial and error, just like 10 times that by 20 instead of, okay, well, I did bad on that one WCS event. Hopefully I do better in 3 months at the second WCS event. Yeah, that's where the self-improvement is for me. If I I haven't ever really been good at taking feedback, to be honest, if I'm going to be 100% real. I always do that thing where if I get feedback, either like well-intentioned or not, well, let's say well-intentioned because I don't really pay attention to Twitch chat or something like that. So let's say well-intentioned and they just thought they were doing me a favor. Like I didn't even ask. I'd be like, I didn't ask. And then and then they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. I just thought it was, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. That was my bad. And I'd be like, yeah. And then and like 5 minutes later, I'd be like, shit, they had a really good point. Because it just takes me like
ZombieGrub's really easy to be friends with.
It takes me like 5 to 10 minutes to just like digest that like I didn't do everything. Like it takes me 5 to 10 minutes to digest, not that I didn't do everything perfectly, but that they're bringing something up I already knew and I don't want to talk about it. So when they say it and I'm like, I can't just say like I don't want to talk about it because then it sounds even bitchier. But anyways, like it doesn't happen though. Was my second point. Like it doesn't actually happen. No one's come up to me of the close friends and colleagues that I would trust to give me good advice. No one's ever been like, hey, ZombieGrub, totally called that wrong. I guess one time In Control did, but he joked. So that was a joke. So
you can't even tell if it's
so, but if I ever did go up to someone, like I would generally try and bring something very specific, because I know Feardragon might be able to talk about this more, but he has tried asking people for critique, and it's actually really hard to get people to give you critique. They don't, that basis, people don't want to be the one to make you feel bad about yourself potentially. So you have to come in and like say like, hey, I think my knowledge was off. Could you watch the ZVZ cast and point out where maybe I was incorrect? Because if you just say like, hey, did I do a good job? Everyone's gonna be like, yeah, I did great. It's great.
Yeah, sure. You're good.
Yeah. But like, oh my God, it's actually so frustrating sometimes. Asking for feedback is like, and actually getting it is really difficult. I know I've tried, and like there's like different ways you can do it that you can find more success or less success. Like if you just finish like casting with someone, you're like, hey, so can you tell me what you thought I did well and didn't do well? It's like, I mean, it's like you're not really in the headspace where you were like critiquing your co-caster that entire time or something. So unless there's something really big, and they also feel comfortable, like ZombieGrub was talking about. But I've even had like, I constantly ask like players and stuff who say like, they'll like message me like, oh hey, like thanks for casting something. I'm like, hey, yeah, if you watched any of that, can you please tell me like any feedback or anything game knowledge wise if I said something wrong? Like I almost never get it. In fact, I've even had one time, I won't call it names, but there was one pro player who was just like trashing me on like my game knowledge and stuff during one of the WCS Challenger broadcasts. And like I messaged them afterward. I was like, hey man, like I saw that you were like really vocal about you not liking a lot of the calls that I was making and stuff. I'd love like, here's like the time segments. Can you explain to me like what, so I can correct my knowledge? Not like from a, hey man, the fuck's your problem? Like you want to like it was like, I actually genuinely want to know what I was saying wrong. And like even then, it's like very difficult to even get a real much of an answer because they're like, I don't really remember it that much. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, that's those situations where like someone's kind of being like a bit of a dick, but they're doing that weird like, well, they'll never see it anyways. Someone's actually like, hey, I'm approaching you with an adult, responsible like response. Could you also respond to me in an adult way? And they go, oh, this is super awkward. I'm not going to do anything. Just do a cool man on
Yeah. So it's really hard to get feedback.
Was you ever like, get good, son? As a response, like, I feel like
just get better, Feardragon. Could you just try that?
I think you ever get it that once, but I think he was joking.
I've had people say to me like, they're just like, I've had people say, I think that only pro gamers should be commentators because these commentators are never going to have the same knowledge as a pro gamer. And I mean, I feel like a lot of sensible people can put 2 and 2 together there and what's wrong with that feedback. But I usually, when people say that to me in my Twitch chat, I'm like, you know what? You're right. Let's put Cyril as a desk host. He's the best player in the world right now. Let's put him as desk host. I'm sure it'll be great.
You know what my favorite part would be?
And then they realize when they picture in their brain Cyril in a suit holding those cue cards going, hey, welcome to WCS, that maybe it wouldn't be the greatest show ever. Like, right. We talk about it like that.
My favorite part about that criticism also is that imagine if we just took away all the casters that aren't like pro players and let's just bypass the whole there's actually nobody like hype casting or like very few or whatever. Eventually, you just know that the next criticism is going to be, well, that's a former pro player. We want active pro players. Like this guy just isn't really competitive anymore. So I mean, what's he doing? But all the pro players are going to want to compete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For you guys out there that don't know what it's called, but that's the sign that appears under your head when you're close and a close up on camera is called a lower third. And there are a few of those that have been quite funny and so we've been talked about a little bit where they will say like, Jeff in control Robinson, former player.
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of weird. I still play it every day. I'm Grandmaster.
Yeah. It's one of those moving the goalpost things because it's like the more common saying I think is like, well, they're not even Grandmaster or they're not even Master. And then you get it. They're not even Grandmaster. You get it.
Shouldn't be a commentator. They're not masters. They're not GM. What are they doing on the microphone? Yeah.
It's not even good critique. I just want to answer like one question in chat, not the one that you said you would ask, but there's one up top where like someone said, do you ever compare yourself to or look to professional sports broadcasting, like like sports like NFL or something like that? Is what I think what he meant. And I'll open it up. I'm going to be the third host. I took your guys' job. The other guys as well. But I would say that generally, no. I actually read a book on it. And it was filled with so many, reminders to say the score to the radio audience. I was like, this isn't a one-to-one thing. This isn't quite.
It's a very different thing. Because nobody, when you watch games, like hockey, you watch football, you watch maybe in baseball, but in most sports, they're not telling you anything. They'll tell you something about the player, their stats, and they tell you what's happening. Nobody explains strategy. Nobody explains why they're doing anything. Nobody explains the game like we did. Yeah. It's
all in those like post-analysis things, which I wish WCS had. But it's also, I just literally today, so it was quite well timed, took a voice lesson from a guy who works with like soccer and football coach, commentators and voice actors. And the way he tried to understand how casters work, and he was like, well, which one of you leads more? And I was like, before cast, we kind of just look at each other and go, well, do you want to lead or I want to lead? And then it's,
sometimes it's not even in words. You just sort of like look at each other and go, with your eyes. Like,
exactly. So,
and then they'll just sort of like shrug and go, nod a bit. And that means they'll take it. And if they shake their head, then that means you take it.
So it's so different, but there are still a lot of things you could learn about how they're coached. It just isn't a one-to-one like, well, that NFL broadcast is going to be like StarCraft broadcast.
I thought a lot about this actually, and I actually watch a decent amount of sports because just my friends are really into like watching like football and basketball and all that stuff. And one of the things I thought about the most is like, if you look at most sports games, whatever is happening for just like most people, it's just you understand what's going on from like this is what it takes to do something, and therefore I can already draw the tangent of like, oh, this is impressive because that guy weighs like 350 pounds and he is directly tackling this other guy and they're holding their ground. Like that is just immediately, no one has to explain to me that that's impressive or that's like really, really cool because I understand I exist in this physical world. So I know what's difficult and what's not, or at least I have some sense of it. But in like esports, no, not quite. But in esports, it's like a lot more in between, I think, where there's not the direct correlation. Like I could see a video game and I could be like, wow, that looks really impressive visually. Like characters flipping and doing all kinds of crazy things in a fighting game. But I don't actually know what was involved in executing that. So that is where I think the commentators in esports have to talk a lot more. That's like my theory on it. I don't know if that's 100% always true, but I feel like that's why a lot of the commentary style is also really different.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Different type of question here. Obviously, with every esports event, pretty much there's going to be technical delays, downtime, whatever. What's kind of either the worst or most awkward situation to kill just dead time when you're killing time? Feardragon, you're pretty good at this. When have you run into that the most, and what's your like go-to strategy when someone's in your ear saying like, yeah, like 10 minutes, just talk?
Oh, I don't think that happens anymore, but go on, Robbie.
Draken, can I talk about one?
You know what? Sure. Why not? Yeah, sure. Describe it. It's cool. Why not?
Okay, so like I think that all of us have had experience in like trying to kill time or something, or there's always going to be issues. Like there was one time I remember I was like casting a team league and one of the players was in the lobby and stuff, and they're like, okay, yeah, I just need to use the restroom really quickly. They disappeared for 45 minutes because apparently their restroom was a Denny's like half a mile down the road. It was like because their toilet clogs. Like, so you know what? I'm okay with filling time and stuff. I think that when you're working at events, though, there's like definitely a trust that happens with production and a lot of the time. So I think the more frustrating times or the times that can feel a little more out of control are when things are not just like things are not going well, but it's like if you don't feel like you're in the loop on what's going on, that can be a really frustrating situation. So I know that's happened before where like I think it happened on like KSL or something once with Tasteless and Artosis. I think it was like some big clip or something where Tasteless and Artosis just try to like throw to a break, but then just nothing happens.
Yeah.
And like you can kind of tell like it doesn't seem like they're actually being talked to in their ear. Nobody's like saying like, okay, hold on, we need to like we need like an extra 30 seconds or something. It's just like, are we going to a break? But I guess we're not going to break. So like those kind of moments can be frustrating, or like if there's a big stall and you don't know why there's a big stall, like you eventually start running out of stuff to say. So I'd say like those are the kind of frustrating moments. I think filling time is like, it's not always super fun, but that's just kind of part of the job, I think, in my opinion.
What about for you, ZG? Do you remember a time when you had to kill a
Yes, she does.
normal? Oh. Let's hear the story.
Don't die though, Trekken.
Everyone keeps coming back to me. You know, it's fine. If you want to bring out the North,
coming out. Nah, I mean, like it don't mean to be a dick, but it was probably the most egregious like time I had to buy. Because it all comes down to like, again, like not pointing fingers because everyone was like flustered, but whenever there's a time where no one's speaking to you is the worst time. So there are times when they'll say, oh, you need to, like the less worst times, it's still like not great. And that happened on Montreal. And I'm guess I never went back and looked at Twitch chat when it happened, but I'm guessing they all noticed. Was we had to stall, and Nate was kind of doing this thing where he was like keep going without having like the whole like we're stalling talk. So Feardragon said his piece, and then I went to me, and I literally said two things, which was my first mistake. I said first, blah, 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 blah. And then our producer went game. She was like really, really, really insistent. So Nate like thought it was like a fucking emergency, right? Like someone was 12 pulling, and he was like, well, we got to go into the game. And I was like literally saying second of all, and he was like, sorry, we got to go into the game. And I was like, so that was kind of weird. But anytime the producer doesn't give you any information or any planned information, like, hey, expect 2-minute break, they're just like, hold on. And they just like leave and they don't even talk to you. That's the fucking worst. And that has happened.
And how hard is that to get used to? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're right. I was remembering a tournament in particular. It was in Australia, where the producer, I don't know if they were going to have a cigarette or something, but it was clearly the games weren't happening, and we were like doing everything we could to nonchalantly tell the producer that we wanted a break so bad. Because I think it was me and Zeph or me and Pig or something, and we were just talking for 15, 20 minutes. We ran out of things to say. We thanked the sponsors twice already. We talked about the series to death. We literally ran out of information to tell people. And we were just saying, oh man, hopefully this player can catch a break. It'd be cool if they could get, it's a really good commercial sponsor that we have for this tournament. Because you can't just say producers, God damn it, please take us to commercial. So you're just try to just do it on the down low. But that was just a funny thing that I remembered from like a WCS in Australia.
Yeah, let's bring it up, man. At Kings of the North last year. There was a time where we had to fill a lot of downtime, and the worst thing about it was that the guys in the back room or the side room, I could have literally went like this off camera and been like, guys.
Yeah.
That
was their their first esports.
Yeah, I mean, like they just, but they were there. They were working. We could literally see them. And Feardragon, oh, I love you, Feardragon. He like, kind of sets this perfect throw up where he's like, I got to give him I give him like 30 seconds to make sure they're even ready. So I'm going to say, hey guys, before we go to a commercial break, big thanks. So, he's setting it up perfectly.
Yeah.
And then he ends like with the whole like, see you guys soon. And then it just doesn't do anything. And I'm thinking, and I go, I guess not, Feardragon.
I'm like, I guess not.
That's everyone that casted a lot has had at least one or two of those stories for sure. But I feel like that in all seriousness, these days with your WCSs and the big tournaments, it's very, very rare because the production's very, very good. With I think Austin 2017 was the first time we had the production crew that we've had for every WCS since then. With Dagny and the guys of DreamHack, who are really, really good. But I feel like Austin was the one and only event where we were starting to try and find our feet together and work between caster and production. So there was a few production mistakes there, a lot of downtime issues and that sort of thing. We were getting frustrated with production, they were getting frustrated with us, but we figured it out. Like it was like only day 1, and then day 2 and 3 were a lot better, and then ever since then they've really been amazing. Like every WCS you've watched, or I feel like I've watched since then, has gotten really good. Like I heavily disagreed with who was it? I think it was Nate said that every WCS seems like it's the same, or someone said like another caster said that every WCS feels like it's the same, like it's not a new product, it's not evolving. But for me, as someone that's worked at events, worked at as many WCSs as I've not, like I watch them from home if I'm not there because I'm a fan of the game and it's my job to watch them. I feel like it really, really is like at a new level right now. Like for me, watching Austin from home was hype as fuck. I thought it was amazing. I thought it shadowed over Austin the previous year. And then watching Montreal from home, same deal. Massive crowd, great production, very few mistakes. Like occasionally there'll be a hard cut to someone that's, the camera's got a guy on his phone, which I think they should never do. But
I remember that one.
Like occasionally that'll happen, but considering the amount of broadcast hours there is similar to the amount of words you say in a cast. Like if you mess up once or twice, you'll forget about it and move on because there's just so much content.
I don't know, man. The highest viewed clip on twitch.tv/StarCraft is when they cut to the audience and there's just a dude and a chick making out.
Nice. I never saw that clip, but sounds like I should bookmark it.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted to ask this question from chat, and I want to make sure we don't forget it before we go into like a different kind of direction. We were talking previously about feedback, and they asked what kind of feedback is important in the context of commentating. I feel like StarCraft 2 is complex enough, and that there isn't a clear, correct interpretation that can be made in the moment. So what kind of feedback is important to you?
Well, who wants to start?
I can start with, I'm going to assume that a lot of this time, or like in this, I'm going to make an assumption about this question and say it's like feedback if people from community or something was giving feedback. Yeah. One of the things that always annoys me, like for example, there's a lot of ways that you can give very ambiguous feedback, and that can be really frustrating because like I think a lot of the time it's like lazy feedback is the way I like to put it, where for example, I could literally point to any commentator. I could point to anyone. I could point to a player and say, wow, they just don't have game knowledge, because I don't have to back that up.
Yeah,
I don't have to provide any facts or details or examples. All I have to say is you just don't have strong game knowledge. But that's not an actionable thing because it's so ambiguous and it's lazy feedback. So having pointed feedback, like saying, and oftentimes you'll also, this is like the second part of it, while yes, you can pick apart a really negative comment for the like actual feedback within it. Like if someone says, Jesus Christ, Feardragon, I can't believe you don't know that like this proxy was for Reapers instead of, and you said it was for Marines. You're such a garbage commentator, and I hope that you kill yourself tonight. Like I could take that apart and say like, okay, the knowledge thing that lies in there is that this is a proxy is more common a proxy for Reapers than Marines or something. I can take that, but if you phrase things in a more positive way, or like not such an asinine, aggressive way, people are more likely to read that feedback, and it's a lot easier and a lot more pleasant to try and parse that through, saying like, hey, like I think that I see a lot more often the proxy Reapers instead of the proxy Marines, and that's because of this, this, and this. And now I'm actually getting that information, and now it's not just this ambiguous like, Jesus, well, why do you see more proxy Reapers? Like, you also have some explanation. There's some reasoning. You're walking that person through. And I think this is actually not even just feedback for casting. This is like feedback for life. If in anything, if you're an asshole and you're super aggressive about it and you give ambiguous feedback, it's really hard to actually take any action on it. So
100% agree. For me, a lot of the feedback that I've gotten that's always really helped me, like I talked about Apollo before, is usually from my peers, my fellow commentator, my brothers and sisters in the commentary team. But the feedback that I've gotten from, excuse me, that was a really loud horn. It's like I'm getting played off the stage. But the feedback that I've gotten not from commentators that I've taken on board and actually remembered, because I also forget a lot of bad feedback because the bad feedback is very forgettable, has been presented, like Feardragon said, positively, with the intention to help and with evidence, with like data that you can approach. Like, for instance, I'll tell you a story. Like, one time I was streaming and a guy jumped in my chat and said, Maynard, I don't think you should cast with Tasteless anymore because because it was after GSL World. He was like, I don't think you should cast with Tasteless anymore because I think that the game knowledge between you guys wasn't good enough in Serral versus Innovation. And I'm like, and then everyone in my chat was like, oh my God, ban this fucking idiot. How dare he come into Maynard's chat and tell them that he's not the best? And I was like, no, we're not banning this guy. I'm like, what are you talking about? Let's humor him. I guess I was feeling generous that day. I was like, you may speak. So he went on about it. He actually lent me a clip and explained that I was complimenting Innovation on his macro having the same work account as the Zerg, but there was a reason for that, and it was because there was an all-in coming that I should have noticed. And I'm like, okay. And then he linked me, and then he told me that if a Zerg is at so-and-so minutes with so-and-so drone count, they are about to all in. And I'm like, that's actually a really handy pick of information. And I was absolutely incorrect when I said that about praising the macro of the Terran for keeping his SCV count up with the Zergs. There's a reason for that. If Serral wanted more drones than Innovation, he would have had it. He just didn't because he was about to send a whole bunch of roaches into his face. And that's something as a commentator you should know, right? And it's not something Tasteless is going to tell you. Guarantee you that. So it was something that I wanted to. I feel like it is a very basic thing for me to remember and know. Because, like I said, my not Terran game knowledge is pretty bad. Well, not bad, but it's a lot better now than it was. But I'm just being self-deprecating. But that was something that I remembered and have kept in mind since then. Because even though it was negative feedback, it was provided constructively with the intention to help. And at the end of the conversation, the guy was even like, "Thanks, man. I have been banned from certain. I nearly said his name, but I'm banned from certain so and so's chat because I tried to give them feedback and they didn't take it very well. So they were actually like." I'm so happy that you were cool about my feedback. This really was intended to help. So, and that's something I remember. And part of the reason I remember it is because it's so rare. Because a lot of people don't give feedback that way. It is, yeah.
VG.
Even that, I would say, he wasn't still very good about it. He eventually was good about it.
He started off like the reason why I was saying I must have been feeling very patient and giving that day is because if feedback starts that way, I will generally be like, all right, whatever text comes out from next to your name in the future, I will ignore because, there's so many people, you're going to go down the rabbit hole, but it turned into a good thing. Like ZombieGrub mentioned. I'm a notorious banner in my Twitch chat. I really don't time people out. I don't have much patience for shitty people. And ZombieGrub definitely engages Twitch more than I do. Like she'll actually ask someone that's really dumb, saying really dumb things. She will engage them and ask them why they're doing that and try and correct them. And to me, I'm like, damn, that's like standing in front of a tidal wave with a stick and saying, I can do this. I can make that not crash.
I just fired the bullets into the hurricane.
Yeah, you
Maynard.
fire the bullets at the hurricane. That's right.
It goes the other way.
This will stop it.
It fixes
I got
the
this.
problem.
Yeah.
Right? America.
America.
Not like, because like I legitimately I do that, and about like 10% of the time I get someone that goes like, you know what, I was kind of being a dick. I'm like, okay. Anyways, like totally agree on those 2 points. I'll add here that I feel like some of us are either forgetting or were never taught how to even give critique in life. Like some people forget, some people like intentionally forget, right? Because it's the fucking internet, and some people just legitimately don't know. Which is really too bad. But this is all going back to like what I was, the reason I got better at taking feedback is because I was forced to as an artist, and it's never very good. So, and also because they literally gave a lecture on how to give feedback.
Yeah.
Right. And like no one, and I feel like some high schools must have had a teacher that said like, hey, someone's going to do a presentation. We're going to feedback them as if they're High Templars, and this is how you should do it. Maybe they never did, and then everyone's forgotten, and then everyone expects you to be the guy that says, okay, please explain to me why I'm wrong, even though you're the one that's coming off as a jackass. Like, and that's just the truth of it. That guy who eventually ended up being cool to Maynard, the way he came off initially was like a jackass. And
Correct.
What do you do when 100 times in your day you have jackasses?
You ignore them.
You're just gonna ignore them or ban them, and like that's not on us, actually, in my opinion. It's actually on you guys, if you're gonna give feedback, to learn how to give feedback.
When I was on the Pylon show one week, and we were, and one of the topics that week was the caster feedback thread on Team Liquid.
Yeah.
And the TLDR of that, the TLDR of that entire mess. Artosis is very, and I had very strong opinions. And Artosis is a guy with very strong opinions. And I was also with a very strong opinion that it was a complete dumpster fire, not because the thread was a bad idea, but because of how it was being used. And it's just like ZombieGrub mentioned, if we went through that thread and read every single post, and I read like enough of them to make my mind up, is that all I saw was just baseless, directionless, negative feedback. That just really, it didn't have that constructive thing that Robbie was talking about. It didn't have that. It didn't have anything that was actionable, to take his words. Like, there wasn't a thing there to take to improve yourself. It was just like, well, today I learned that Dick Cheese X69 doesn't like me, or whatever their username is. I could have gone the rest of my day without knowing that, but now that I do know that, I'm going to forget about it within an hour. There's nothing for me to work with here.
Yeah, I like Feardragon's word for actionable. It was a good
actionable.
one.
Yeah, he's worked in an office before. That's how you know that. He's been on projects working with teams.
I got all those buzzwords.
Yeah, there's some great synergy and actionable context. Yeah, stuff like that.
I'm gonna cloud compute some commentator feedback.
That's right, cloud compute.
Speaking of actionable, what is, and we start with young Feardragon, since you are the freshest, and I'm curious from your is what is your biggest contract negotiation lesson in terms of negotiating your compensation? What is your biggest lesson that you've learned?
Me personally?
Yes, you personally. Whether it be from a bad experience or a really good experience, or something that someone told you because you did something not so good. Who knows?
I'm still on the fence about this, but stop doing stuff for free. Like, entirely. Like, it's okay to do some stuff for free, but stop paying for opportunities. I've literally done that before. And it's probably not a good idea, but it was like a paid it's like paid internships for experience, except I was the one paying the company. Or like paying in like out of pocket in a sense, which is not a good idea.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. Contract negotiations. I mean, I think the biggest thing is like it's okay to say no, or like to take a step back and not immediately take just the first offer.
Right.
But I mean, it's like very generic, like know your worth advice, but it's so difficult to know your worth.
ZG, what was your sort of your biggest negotiation lesson?
Well, I think for me, I literally had a lesson given to me by my dad. So there is not really a trial by fire, not yet, because I've only ever negotiated 3 times at this point, 3 times. But my dad, I literally asked my dad, like, a lot of the FACasters are saying we should be negotiating, and I agree. So I know you're pretty good at it, and he kind of broke it down for me. He said he gave me some advice that I ended up going with because I felt a little too uncomfortable. But to his credit, that's why he's a good negotiator, is because he will bring up these things and mark people for things. So yeah, that's my biggest lesson, is what I learned from my dad.
Maynard,
what's up, bro?
What's your biggest negotiation lesson?
Oh, I mean, I feel like I was talking about it with ZombieGrub and Robbie. I mean, we talk a fair bit online, and I feel like I was talking about it yesterday, where I feel like I'm actually still learning. I don't feel like I'm a very confident negotiator in StarCraft, because I touched on it a little bit earlier when I was saying that, you know, every final is a dream come true, and something that I find quite magical and very special compared to a lot of the others who have done so many, that it's really like it's not something that they, I guess, I don't want to say appreciate. I'm sure they appreciate it, but not. I would argue that I'm probably appreciating it a lot more, as it's just a bit of a rarity for me still. But I feel like every event that I get offered is a huge privilege, because of the many years I've had working full time, thinking that being a commentator and being able to live as a commentator was a complete pipe dream. And now that it's reality, I'm like so thankful that it exists and that it's an opportunity that I can accept. That when I'm offered something, I feel like my subconscious always says, take it now. You want this? They're like, you want this? You're actually happy with this money? You don't need this money right now. You want this? You can pay the bills. Everything's great. Just go. But then there's my forebrain, which is always like, no. You have to fight back, and you have to push back, even if you feel like, you know, you want to just say yes instantly, which I did for most of my events, by the way. I've only just started negotiating recently. I want to start pushing back, because a lot of the people, you know, they don't want to be pushovers. They don't want to show that they're just you know, they're going to be lackeys, for lack of a better word. That they're human beings that should be looked after and have rights, and should be, you know, shown appreciation by having a raise here and there. I still just feel like it's such an honor and a privilege that I find it really hard to negotiate past the point of saying, hey, can I have this instead? And then they say no, and I go, okay, you insane. Which is basically what most of my negotiations have been. Or like, you know, they'll say, oh, do you know this? And I go, can I have $200 more? No, okay. And that's it. Like, I find it very hard, because I still feel, I even brought it up earlier, I still feel replaceable. A lot of these people don't think that that's the case, but I feel replaceable, which makes it hard for me to negotiate, because I feel like if I push too hard, then they'll grab another guy.
Like, I'll just get this other guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are other people. Like, believe it or not, there are other people that could replace me. Like, people out there are going to go. There are some people, very nice people out there, that go, "Lol, no, that's not the case, Maynard. You're not replaceable." But I disagree. I think there's a lot of really great commentators out there. A lot of people that would appreciate the gig. And if I'm too much trouble, I'm already very expensive to send from Australia. Then I don't want to push too hard. So I try not to bite the hand that feeds. I'm a very you know, I do negotiate, and I do fight back. I'm not saying I'm a complete pushover, but I am a bit of a pushover when it comes to it.
Now, speaking of potentially being replaced at some point in the future, is there a point that you would ever consider moving to another game if there was no more work in StarCraft? We've seen a lot of actually to do that.
I'm actually one of those people. Maybe it's a bit of a rarity, but I've actually tried and thought about. I even at one time did commentate a different game. I did a weekend of Overwatch with my friend Zeph for an Australian Overwatch tournament. We had a good time, but we realized over time that we didn't really enjoy it as an esport. And the other esports I do enjoy, I don't follow anywhere near as passionately as StarCraft. And I feel like a lot of people like me in StarCraft because I am so passionate, and it's actually very hard for me. Like, I'm not one of those people that can hide or pretend to be excited. Like, if I'm not excited, if I'm in a bad mood, you will know. Like, you'll watch me on stream, I'll be very quiet. I'll be very monotonous. I won't have anything really funny to say. I won't have any energy because I'm in a bad mood because I'm having a bad day. Whereas if I'm having a good mood, the complete opposite applies. I'm very energetic. I'm very upbeat. And at WCS, I'm very excited and I'm very upbeat because it's all real, because I am really, really excited and very, very happy to be there. But I feel like I wouldn't have that for another game. So if StarCraft went away, there's no other game out there that exists for me. I would just stop casting.
Really?
Like I would just be maybe, I don't know, maybe you know, there are jobs out there that for MCs, desk hosts, stuff like that I would do. But as a commentator, I would not commentate. I would probably get back into engineering or video editing or something that I studied in uni. I'd become an office junkie again. And I mean, I feel like unless StarCraft 3 or Warcraft 4 or whatever the next RTS comes out that I really, 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 really like, I have to really, really like it. Then yeah. Long story short, there's no game out there at the moment for me.
But you could do a different talent job, just not commentating.
I would consider being a desk host.
Okay.
And I would consider being a stage host, but I would have to think about it. Because I'd be like, do I really want to travel all this way and meet a new crew of people and work in a game that I don't really care about? Yeah. Because at the moment I don't care about any other game.
I'm curious about the others.
Long and short of it.
ZG, what about yourself?
I'm in the same boat as Maynard. I did somewhat get into Overwatch, and it was just, I mean, it was already pretty evident by the time, this was like 2 or 3 years ago, that they weren't even going to do anything. They already had their casters in mind. Only a few were even allowed, like even able to get jobs. It's too hard of a scene to break into, and it wasn't actually that enjoyable of a game to cast. Especially as an analyst, you rarely get time to speak. So, but you know, I'm not saying that the casters that they have aren't very good. They are, but anyways. So that was the only game that I thought I would be interested in when it was announced at BlizzCon and stuff. And then I just realized that RTS is, in my mind, the perfect pacing. I would move on to StarCraft 3 or Warcraft 4, whatever it was, if it wasn't a completely terrible game. I mean, sometimes I worry about what it could potentially be, especially with a
mobile game.
Well, yeah, exactly. With the ideas of what good esports are there, and then they look at it, or what's making the most money, I guess, is more specific, and then they're like, let's just put that into an RTS, and I'm like, no. I'm like, without even actually playing Brood War during the time, I'm already on the whole like, well, maybe StarCraft would be even a little bit harder, and then everyone's like, no. So I know it's going to be easier. I know that for a fact, and that's already like, I don't know.
Which is unfortunate.
It's going to be easier. It's going to have champions, or like it's going to have characters. There's no way.
Listen, I love that.
No way. It will not have characters.
I don't mind the characters thing, right? Like Warcraft is a fun game, even if it wasn't as good of an esport.
I love Warcraft 3.
Oh.
I mean, who's really going to argue? Like Todd's going to come over and be like, "Man, yeah, I have a point." I'll be like, "Well, that's when I know I'm really right." Anyways. So yeah, I would just not cast. If I got to a point where I wasn't hired, or you know, generally disliked in the community, or StarCraft literally died, then I just would probably, I'd be like, I'm not, I don't really want to stream it. You know, I don't want to hang on as a streamer. It's not really what I enjoy. I enjoy talking about StarCraft. So I would just take a year off and work on art again and try and be good at that.
Ravi, what about you?
I'm in that weird place where I'm not full-time commentating. I'm
true.
Still working the whole time. So I like all of my stuff in StarCraft is like purely just because I enjoy talking about StarCraft. And I think it's literally only been this year. It's like the first year that I'm not losing money in my involvement in StarCraft. Every other year I've lost anywhere between like $500 to $15,000 per year. So like,
is that with or without like the players, you know, doing on stage stuff in that factor?
Oh, you're talking about
Yeah, that was a direct loss. That like
that was
all of it.
So I want to know if that is in that.
Well, funny enough, that's actually only.
Is that taxable, Ravi? Like, can you just say I did this stupid contest to your accountant?
Yeah. I would call them a gambling loss.
What's funny is I don't actually have to explain that one away, because that one was this year, which is the year that I'm actually profitable for the first time. So I don't have to worry about that one. But like, yeah, so I know that like I do StarCraft because I enjoy it. If I have another esport or something that I would enjoy commentating, then I would do that. And honestly, the only other one that comes to mind to me is Super Smash Brothers. I'm still super like really into Super Smash Brothers. I don't follow the scene as much as I want to, but like anytime I follow a bunch of like Super Smash Brothers streams, biggest one is like VG Bootcamp and stuff. So I watch that actually a decent bit, I would say, when like I see Melee on or I see occasionally Smash 4 and stuff. And I've thought about maybe getting it a little bit into like Ultimate and stuff. And I've definitely danced around with the idea of becoming a commentator for that. But there's like a lot of other hurdles that get in the way of actually getting super involved. Because like if you try and jump into an old game, there is so much work you have to do as a commentator. Learn about not just how the game is played right now, but also there's all of this stuff beforehand and like the history of players and these stories. All of that stuff is a lot of work. And if you jump into a new game, it's hyper competitive and it can be like there's a lot of other difficulties that come with it. So it's really not easy to just jump into another game.
And it's funny that you mentioned that. I know a commentator who, and obviously I admit his name, but who would join every new game as it came up. So he would get, Heroes of the Storm came out. He'd leave League of Legends and he'd go to Heroes of the Storm. And then when Overwatch comes, and he would get into the major Blizzard tournaments to cast, even on Heroes of the Dorm, until eventually different commentators come out and he gets rotated out. So my question I wanted to segue is, and this came up on Twitter, is how much of getting those gigs, getting getting into those bigger gigs is part of being a meritocracy, merit, and how much of it is just who knows you, like who on that team knows you or who can recommend you. Do you feel that there is a merit base to getting those casting gigs?
I guess I'll start. I think that I think in my experience there is a merit is definitely a part of it, but who is also definitely a part of it. Like my whole story of how I moved up in the casting ladder was I started doing a small event, and then the guy that ran that event told another guy about me, and then that guy told another guy about me, and then Tasteless Narcosis came to Australia for an event, and they were like, "Hey, this guy's really good," and then they told Apollo, and then Apollo told Carmack, and then so it moved up and up and up and up. So it was like I was making friends and building relationships with the biggest names in the business very early, where they were all already like, hey, we'd like to try this guy out. He's from the community. No one really knows him, but he's a really nice voice. He's funny. He's loud. And he has funny hair. Let's put on camera and see how he does. And I feel like that was, I feel like I could have been the greatest commentator ever, but if half a dozen people watched me the whole time, then I wouldn't have gone anywhere. If no one ever saw me, no one ever talked about me and shared, and told their, I guess, higher level friends about me, then I would probably not be commentating still today, because I'd be like, well, I haven't really gotten anywhere with it.
Yeah, I think with StarCraft, it's a bit different because there's Brood War. Like when StarCraft 2 came out, the famous casters were all the Brood War people and Husky. And that was basically just hype. Yeah.
I think the only guys that are from Brood War are In Control and Tastosis. Everyone else was not.
And Day9, yeah.
In the beginning.
Okay, Day9.
In the like early days. Yeah, like it's guys, basically it's people, like as someone joining the game in like 2010, if Team Liquid said this is a guy that's good and credible, then you like that guy. Or like that was also guests on talk shows. It really was that old boys club, whereas new games now are a gold rush. Like it's a new game. If you start a YouTube channel, you can get the audience brand new and nobody knows anything.
Yeah, but I think even for the main events though, a lot of people transfer between gigs and tournaments, and you may work like production on Overwatch here, or but you've worked on Heroes of the Storm there, and then you say, hey, I know a guy who could, or a girl who could do the set jump. And that's why I'm more curious. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, I actually don't know if that's entirely correct. I'm not disagreeing it was an old boys club back then, but you're kind of saying all the Brood War guys were. Well, Brood War and all those guys that had big YouTube channels. I mean, we kind of forget how many casters we had, but there was a ton of casters that were just popular because of YouTube.
Yeah, probably more of a mix than I remember now.
Yeah, right. It wasn't
because
just
most of them are gone.
DJ Wheat was one of the biggest ones. He was never involved in Brood War. Doa, you know, those guys weren't.
Kevin Naki.
Oh yeah, man! All these.
HT StarCraft. I think
Caldor was Warcraft 3. Rotterdam was Warcraft 3. Todd's Warcraft 3.
I mean, some of them
kind of mean Brood War /
right. You're kind of saying like,
but
an RTS background, but I think it was also like a bunch of famous YouTube guys.
Yeah.
I do think it was worse in previous years. I think we did have too many casters, and it really was just like not too many casters. We had casters that were being hired because they were available, not because they were also good. They were good, but like maybe they weren't great, right? There was definitely a period where that happened. I don't want to like list exactly when or exactly who, but I think it's true. It did happen. But it's funny because like the way Maynard explained it, it was still. I mean, there's never a not combination. There's always a combination of, well, this person's good, so that's why I talked about them.
Yeah.
So, is it merit or is it people who know you? It's always both. It's unless you're a family friend, and that just won't happen, because if you literally hire someone never seen in StarCraft, they're gonna be like, what the
like say you're Mike Morheim's cousin or something like that, and Mike Morheim's not as cool as he is. Like, he's actually a really, really cool guy. We're just making up his theory here. Like, I'm just gonna grab my little cousin, and I'm a CEO, so what I say goes, put him on the stage. He's going to cast this series, all right? He's going to go with you, Tasteless. Tasteless, you carry him. If someone doesn't have any merit, so this is the other half of things. Like, knowing people is important. So there's the knowing part. But if he doesn't have any merit, it's going to be replaced really quickly, because people are going to be like, "Wow, he's really bad." You still have to earn your stripes by being good when you get there. Otherwise, you don't stick around.
Yeah. Feardragon. Yeah, go ahead, Feardragon.
I was going to say, like, the way I look at it, I agree with most of what you guys are saying. I don't know 100% if this is like a super accurate theory in every single circumstance, but like the way I tend to look at it is there's like a bar for how good you have to be. And if you're above the bar, you're kind of like in consideration. And anything above that is like increases your chances, your percentage chance that you would be considered. So like, if you have like a big following, or like a lot of these other like factors can go and increase that chance. But I do think that there is a lot of random luck when it comes to, like, for example, scheduling and stuff, or all these other kinds of things that can come up, who you happen to know, etc. Actually, like a fun example is like the way that I got my first WCS gig, and I think also ZombieGrub to some extent, if you want to talk about this as well. Like, we've both been commentating since like 2011, 2012. And I finally just like end of 2016 sent like a direct message on Twitter to the guy who manages the WCS circuit for talent. I like asked around and I said, okay, this is the person who does it. And I said, hey, here's my stuff. I'm interested in doing WCS events. And can you give me feedback? Because I just want direction, not necessarily like, hey, can you please hire me or anything? Just like, I'd love feedback because this is the direction I want to go. And it'd be awesome to get more input on how to get closer to that point. And I actually got no feedback whatsoever. But that six months later, he like calls me up and is like, hey, so we have WCS Valencia in 3 weeks. Do you want to do it? And I was like, okay. But like, I really do credit the fact that I just reached out. I think if I didn't reach out, I don't know if I ever would have been hired. So that's like,
I agree with that, actually.
Even just like networking at a very basic level, like literally saying, hey, I'm around to do this. Like there was another event in 2016, I think, like earlier 2016. I was living in Seattle and there was some MSI event. I don't want to name names, but also I can't remember the names, but they got like Axel Toss, which is fine. Or no, sorry. Yeah, it was Axel Toss. And then they got like 2 other commentators who like both had not been involved in StarCraft for a while, or like really weren't very notable. And I was like, and it made me think, like, if I had just said like, hey, I live in Seattle, I spend half of my life doing StarCraft right now. Do you want to hire me? Like, I actually really wonder, like, would I've just been picked up? Because I think a lot of the time, sometimes just putting your name in the ring in like the proper way, because there's like, I want to just cover my bases here. There is saying, hey, like, I'm interested if there's an opening, that's fine. And then there's, hey, so please, like, every like 2-3 days you start messaging someone's like, hey, do you have any opportunities for me to cast? Or like you're messaging base trade or something in the chat like, hey, could you mind if I hop on to the cast? Blah, blah, blah. Like you're solo casting, or like there's extreme ends of that, but politely and kind of respecting the boundaries, still putting your name in the ring. Even that like form of networking can be important.
Yeah. So you said like it's funny because the same person might have been the same like correlation here, Feardragon, because I did contact the same person and say like, hey, per Feardragon's like instructions basically, and I was like, I don't know if it's gonna work, and maybe that's the reason I was hired. The guy said he had me in mind for a while, so I don't know what's true.
Yeah, I think you were.
He had you in mind for a while because I was telling him for a while.
Okay, well that I guess also like Dagny apparently, I heard through like the grapevine at the after party at Austin last year. The producer of DreamHack saw me and she really, really, really liked me. And she really wants to have you. And at the time I didn't know who that was, but I guess now I know it's Dagny. But anyways,
Dag.
Yeah, Dag. That actually is not my first big gig though. And my first big gig was Nation Wars. And that was entirely, I don't know. I have no idea. I was in Korea. I had posted a vlog maybe a month or 2 months ago saying that I was open to opportunities outside of base trade TV, where for years I was not. It was either actually saying I wasn't, like I had not taken one offer from Red Eye saying they, he's not going to be on Rifkin, I wasn't going to go. And then that might have spread through the grapevine. I have no idea. But the point is, like, I did make a vlog kind of officially stating like I was no longer at that point, because that was like 2 years before 2016. I was like, yeah, so that was a long time ago. But I don't know if Nation Wars saw it, if they didn't know anything at all about whether or not I was like trying to do it. Like the way that they explained it, or Roman made a blog, was that he said they always had me in mind because they thought I was a good caster and I had a lot of knowledge about the lower level scene, the people who were going to be in Nation Wars. That's what they said. They could be, making themselves look better, or I have no idea. But they also had an opening, I guess, for fourth casters. So that that worked out too. Like, I don't know, but that one was more of a mystery. And the Montreal thing, that could have been because I reached out.
I have just change slightly gears because I have this question. I'm curious, Rovi, this is to you. In terms of like WCS casters, you're and I double checked. You're the only person of color on the WCS casters roster, and the only non-Caucasian person of the talent team in total. Do you find that there are challenges that lie from crossing that, that professional to that professional level because of any of those kind of what's the word? How to word it? Racial elements?
Yeah, that's a pretty deep question. No. Like, it's literally never ever come up outside of like a joke that I think I'm usually the one that tells, where I joke around and say like I'm a diversity hire, but like I think I'm the only one that ever even says it. And I think I'm like also the only one that still finds it funny to like even say, but like, no, it's actually just, okay, that's not true. There's actually exactly one other time it did come up, and that was because there was one organization that didn't even end up hiring me that was like, yeah, so
he's someone who's not white.
What Asian commentators exist in StarCraft? Because they didn't know any StarCraft commentators. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm on this list apparently, I guess. Because I'm like technically Asian as a brown person, but like, yeah, it's actually just literally never come up.
Right.
Yeah. I don't even consider it. I never even thought about it. I mean, there are some jokes backstage, but it's very like, it's everyone knows each other, and it's cool.
Feardragon tried to use his race card in a joke once, and the guy he was talking to, he didn't realize was like actually like Middle Eastern, or like his background, like his heritage Middle Eastern. And it was hilarious. All right, guys. Feardragon was, I don't actually remember how it went, but basically Feardragon was like race card, and the guy was like, my last name is blank. Feardragon's like, ah, shit.
He brought food for everyone. It was our talent manager. He brought food for everyone else except for me, specifically because what he was bringing, I was allergic to. Like, I would have died if he had brought it. And he knew that. And I just was making like a casual joke, like, oh, what is this? Racism? Like, brought it for all the white people, but not for me. And he's like, my last name is Patel, you. I was like,
oh gosh.
Oh my God.
Did you have a follow-up question for that? Because
the race. I was hoping. I was kind of
only if there was racism. But yeah.
He's like,
so
give me names.
Yeah.
If
It's good.
racism-
quick question, Feardragon. What is a Rubby anyways?
Yeah, what is a Rubby? What the hell?
Yeah.
I thought it was
That
Ravi.
is going to be a secret reserve for the back room, the green room of WCS
Oh,
events.
well, I'm glad you said green room because back room means something different.
Mm-mm.
So the I think that if racism and inequality and that sort of thing was a problem, then Blizzard would be what Riot is right now, getting shut on.
But I was more kind of curious that sometimes even in different, especially when it comes to talent, there is a level of not just your ability, but how you look becomes an important sort of choice. Whether you're female, good-looking male, whatever that may be, white, black, sometimes just to look for that balance of color. I was curious if that was ever a factor, and Robbie obviously was like, nope, never. But
nope.
The only time it's ever come up is that when we get makeup done, a lot of the times, like they'll have like the makeup pads, and they'll have like special little brushes or whatever and everything. And I noticed that for some reason, whereas there's always like these nice pads that are like clearly pre-bought and everything with specific colors and everything, mine is always a napkin. Like, that's actually now that I think about that, is the only thing that I'm like, I think I'm getting like the ghetto makeup a little bit right now.
They see you, the makeup lady says like, all right, next please, you come sit up. She's just like, oh.
We don't carry this normally.
Or darker.
Oh, my white people makeup. Oh no.
It's actually so bad though, because I guess you guys wouldn't really know, but there are a lot of makeup sets that'll be like total coverage or whatever, right? They're like made for people who do makeup, and there's like 7 different colors of Caucasian and 1 black. Like, like it's covered.
Wow.
We got it. Oh God.
Oh my God. But this question particularly was, we had a discussion, which ZG, you were a part of, for the females in StarCraft, and the idea that sometimes female talent were chosen regardless if they were StarCraft related or not, because there was that level of which a female was required for the broadcast to appeal to the audience, whatever. So I was curious to see if, we need to make sure our image doesn't show all Caucasians. Let's find that.
But there is no other lady out there that is a commentator that has the level of knowledge of ZombieGrub. So there's she's there for a reason.
Well, clearly,
no other guy would judge.
I mean, you feel free to come to me and name me another one, and I will sit here and I will apologize publicly. But right now, it does not exist. So.
All right. So we've now solved sexism and racism on this
yes,
show.
thank God.
So neither of those things are prevalent in SE2. They are only in Twitch chat and only by dummies.
We only talk about race balance. All right. No.
Yeah.
There is some pretty heavy.
Let's transition to that. Let's transition to that. What is your favorite and least favorite matchup to cast, and is it ZBZ?
Is it what?
Is it ZBZ as your least?
Oh, gotcha.
My least favorite is actually TVT.
Yeah.
I casted TVT with Feardragon in Montreal. Can I say this? Can I tell the story?
Go for it.
Okay, and after the cast, he was like, "I'm so glad that like it was a short one because I had no idea what was going on."
I was like, what was happening? Because it was literally it was time versus Hero Marine, and I was just sitting there like being like, okay, I see like this opening, I see this opening, and then time just shits all over Hero Marine. I'm like, why wasn't that close? I was just like,
yeah,
what?
That was a weird one anyway, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Maynard.
For me, it's TVZ. I even say it sometimes when it's a really big TVZ. I'm like, this to me is StarCraft, humans versus the aliens, the Swarm versus the men, Starship Troopers. Sorry, Protoss. But it just seemed like the quintessential box art matchup for StarCraft 2 is TVZ. And I felt the same in Brood War as well. Actually, TVZ was my favorite matchup. Just really liked mech is cool and all, but in TVZ and in Brood War is generally that sort of very micro intense, very aggressive bio rallies type of thing. And in Heart of the Swarm, there was a lot of that, 3-base rally bio with Widow Mines and Legacy of the Void. It's 2-2 timing pushes of siege tanks, which are like my favorite unit at the moment in the Terran Arsenal. So, and in Wings of Liberty, it was even like that siege tank, bio siege tank. So that sort of style of game is always been really exciting for me, and for some reason that matchup just really gets my blood boiling. Like I just get really excited, especially when it's a series that means a lot, when both players are incredibly closely matched and incredibly good. It's incredible. But I remember the last TVZ that I did that was that high level that was so amazing was the Maru versus Serral match that everyone was waiting for, that happened in GSL vs. the World. It was only a best of one, but I still remember it just because it was so close, it went so long, and the match meant so much to the community. That all those things combined just make me love that matchup,
Absolutely. And no one said ZVZ. That was actually really surprising.
Well, no one gave their worst, so
that's the worst.
Well, sorry, one person gave
that
his
was
worst.
funny, yeah, because I didn't give my best, but I gave my worst, and Maynard gave
So what's the other ones for you guys?
Terran versus Protoss. I think it's like the most. I agree with Maynard, and I think a lot of the community looks at TVZ as like the best and quintessential thing. But to me, TVP has almost always been like the most beautiful matchup in terms of. I think whenever Zerg's in a matchup, I feel like oftentimes it dominates the map control aspect of the game. Like a lot of the time, Protoss or Terran are always moving out as like one big ball, and they're always very clumped up together or something. And like even when there's rally-ins from Terran, it's like I think there's like a very different aspect there. Whereas in TVP, I feel like there's a lot more of a sense that you can move around the map more freely. And that actually creates really cool, interesting dynamics and a lot more back and forth instead of just like, this army is really strong as a group and the other army is constantly moving around and like trying to outflank them and stuff. TVP.
There you go.
Did you?
Maynard,
your worst?
Oh, my worst matchup?
Yeah.
Geez. I'm gonna go ahead and say ZVZ. I'm sorry, guys.
That made more sense.
All right, good. I was just going to keep going.
I think that the matchup can be beautiful. The Montreal Grand Finals is evident of that. There's a lot of ZVZs that have been great. Even the BlizzCon Grand Finals between Sue and Rogue were really cool. But the matchup to me is it's a little bit of a slugfest and a little bit of a conundrum as well. Like even though I understand PvP less, I enjoy casting it and watching it more because it seems really, really cool. Like, Prism harassment. In ZVZ, there's very little harassment. It's run bys usually, right? Like a bunch of lings will run through and attack a drone line, something like that. But in PvP, there's Prism stuff. There's air units. A lot of the time, there's the clump battle is really there as well. There's a lot of really useful units in the game. Whereas in ZVZ, it kind of seems like you're going Lingbane Muta or you're going Roach Ravager into Lurker. And eventually one person will get Broodlords if it goes long enough. And that's ZVZ.
All right. Wait, Jess, did you do your worst and your best? Or did we
not?
She's done neither.
Wow, what?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your worst and your best?
My best is probably gonna be TVZ. The TVT is actually kind of right behind it. I find it an incredibly easy matchup to at least explain, even if I don't like call everything correctly, like the Hero Marine time thing. I'm like, oh, I know this happened. So I feel like it make me smart. And then my worst, I even before Montreal, I was already kind of warming up to ZVZ. Maybe it's because we have like really dynamic new styles, like more people are playing into that Ling stuff. Like Raynor was obviously going to do it, but then even Laser's been doing it a lot more lately. So I will still say ZVZ, because if I get like Namshar versus, I don't know, Snoot, I'm gonna be like, but I actually might even like say ZVP. I'm really not enthralled with that matchup right now. It can be cool, but I don't know. It doesn't have any of the the cool moments like the other matchups do for me right now.
Okay. Just trying to. Feardragon has to jump out, and he's gonna run away for us. So
Yeah.
we're gonna. I had one last question. Are you gonna run away? And can you answer this as you're leaving, like walking away? So
Yeah,
I wanted to know. Oh,
Sure.
sweet, absolutely. Here's the question. He goes: Artanis comes to you in a giant mothership, takes you back in time 6 years, and brings you back to meet your former self. What advice do you give that person, that 6 year ago Ravi?
Learn to L cancel in Super Smash Brothers, you freaking scrub. All right, I'm out. Thanks.
Nice.
Hi, Ravi.
that question to you, ZG.
Oh, what did I tell myself 6 years ago?
6 years ago.
So that was 2012. Oof.
Yeah.
I just graduated and I was close to graduating and I was kind of doing StarCraft. Oof. I don't know. I see the reasons I never like these questions because I never believe that I'll tell my previous self something and it won't drastically change the way that my life has gone. So
Right? That's what I'm thinking. If Artanis showed up to me in 2012 and told me about my future self, you think that doesn't change what happens?
Oh, I got one. I would tell ZombieGrub 2012 that Maynard's a really cool guy because for some reason
shit.
Maynard just came up to me and was like, "I really think you're cool," and I was like, "Really?" Actually, I was kind of drunk, by the way. But anyway,
Who knows what could have happened in 2012? But I think the answer for me is just to work harder. It's a bit of a cop-out thing, but I feel like I was really lazy with a lot of things. Like not only with my full-time job at the time, but as a commentator, I felt like, like I mentioned, it wasn't until Apollo and those big events where people were really taking a chance on me, and I felt like I really had to perform, where I felt that pressure to not be lazy. To me, it always felt like something that I never took really seriously until it mattered. It really, really mattered. And I feel like if I took it seriously a lot earlier, then who knows? I could be, an even bigger commentator now than I am right now. Like I could be one of those staples, those mainstays in WCS, where instead of being contracted for events, I am just one of the guys or the guy if I worked hard enough. So I feel like I was very lazy in 2012 compared to 2018 Maynard, due to necessity, and I would have been a little bit more assertive with, it took a while for Feardragon to reach out, it took a while for ZombieGrub to reach out. I feel like if I reached out earlier as well, which can be just under the umbrella of being less lazy, then I would have done a lot better. But I definitely wouldn't have told myself to do something else. What I'm doing right now, I have never been happier in my job, I guess. Like there's personal life stuff, and then there's career stuff. And as far as career goes, I can't say I've never been poorer. I've definitely been poorer than this, but I make a comfortable income where I can still live and survive. And I've never been happier with not feeling the need to scrape and chase a dollar. Like I'm always one of those guys that would rather be paid peanuts doing what I love than getting paid a lot doing what I don't love. And I'm very happy that that's the case these days. So I wouldn't tell me to go any different. Just work harder.
Oh, I knew you guys would come up with an awesome answer.
Very, very wholesome answer. I like it.
I think ZombieGrub's is more wholesome.
I think so.
Okay.
We could even be bestest buds. Instead of like really good buds, we could be bestest buds.
Well, if only Artanis would come.
We could have been, the main grub or Zombie-Nard or whatever. They'd be like, guys, we got to leave Korea and go back to New England and go back to Kansas because these two kids are too good. They can't take it on each other, too popular, too good at commentating. What do we do?
And with Zombie-Nard. That's perfect.
Yeah, Zombie-Nard, main grub. We haven't really. I don't think Archon names are a thing anymore. But
Not so much.
we definitely, like ZombieGrub and I definitely got a very quick chemistry going on when we started commentating together. It was really easy, which was great.
It's always great when you find someone that you kind of gel, when you get that synergy with.
Yeah, I actually feel like, just as a side note, like a lot of the reason why I feel like StarCraft 2 casters, or rather the casting crew for the highest level stuff, why I think that they are the best. And I do watch other esports, so I do compare, and I feel like, it's hard to be objective because, you're part of it, and it's also they're your friends, and you want your friends to do well. But I do feel like, when I really think about it, that part of the reason why a lot of people will agree with me that StarCraft 2 commentary is just so good is because everyone is friends and everyone gets along, and there's really not been any drama.
True.
There's really not been any drama between any of us ever. Like, it's just it's always been cool. Like, there's been arguments, there's been disagreements, but they're always resolved really quickly. I can only think of maybe one or two situations that have been like someone's been a little bit sore several events in a row over something, but it's done. Whatever's happened, it's been done with.
I'm glad that that actually answers a question that I didn't get to get to, and gladly enough, because we're running a bit overtime. But at the same time, that is, a lot of esports will have drama and people who will try to cut you off from getting a gig and stuff like that. And I was curious if that was going to be a thing, but you answered it without me getting to ask that question. So
well, there you go. I mean, to touch on something you just said, we are, you have a bunch of commentators on, so we are going to get a little wordy and it'll get a little long. Sorry.
No, I'm not.
But we always go over.
I will say that there definitely has been drama, but it was more in the past, and those people that kind of caused that drama are now doing the same thing in different games.
True.
Yep, and good riddance.
So it did exist at some point. It's just
it absolutely did exist. Yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't anymore. The 2018, 2017, 2016 StarCraft, I'd say even all the way back to the beginning of Heart of Swarm, I can't even think of any drama except for, maybe community people getting mad at each other.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
And I guess this kind of brings it back to something I wanted to say, a conversation a while ago. And now twice we've kind of done this. So well, there's we have the combination of merit and people, and now we have there's been no drama in years. That is not to say that there's not ways things are done and that everything is absolutely perfect, and there are ways people are chosen over others and all that. But it's so not dramatic. It's all reasonable. It just is okay, that's how it goes. That's how
you say chosen over others.
What?
When you say chosen over others, do you mean picked for certain events over other events?
Events, right? I think the most obvious example is Todd had make a video about why he didn't get picked for he didn't get 4 events, he got 2 events instead. And that's what I mean when I say it's really not that dramatic. It's, he didn't do anything wrong. None of the newer casters did anything wrong, even though a lot of people kind of brought us into it. It was actually just a decent amount of really truly talented people who all have specialties. And unfortunately, StarCraft's not a game where you hire 8 people per event. So that's where not all rainbows and candy, but it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's quite good. It's quite kind. I have very few complaints. Obviously, I want to do more events, as everyone else does, because not only is it money, it's really fun and it's lovely seeing all your friends and hanging out. But it's like Todd felt the need to say something. People were coming to me about it as well, because it was the exact same situation with me, where I was only doing 2 events instead of 4. Where Todd last year was doing 4 with Rotterdam. I never was doing every single WCS. But people were asking me, how come you're only here and you're not there? And I'll just say, I wasn't hired. And it doesn't mean anything. Like ZombieGrub mentioned, it's just we have a lot of talent, and the guys that hire people honestly will say to you straight up that I wanna have these people having a fair crack at it. I want Pig to have 2 events. I want you to have 2 events. I want ZombieGrub and Feardragon to have 2 events. I want I want everyone that's part of the show that isn't a mainstay, which is basically just Smix, Nathan, and Rotterdam. They are the only three people that are at every WCS, except for, even in Leipzig, Smix couldn't come. There was Anna Prosser came instead.
In Control.
And and In Control as well. But he didn't come to Leipzig either because of the Warhammer thing. But he will be there unless he can't be. They are the mainstays. And I guess it'd be cool to be a mainstay, but it's not really realistic when you live in Australia. It's very hard to all that. And also, I feel like there's definitely levels of commentator, and my my level is not tippity top. And that's a realistic thing for everyone that you have on this call today. So we're not the tippity top, and we just do what we can at our level, and we're cool with it. Mostly cool with it.
It's funny that we ended up going to the Murtaugh, because StarCraft sounds like in a much better place than, say, the picks for who gets to cast the international, because that is always a fantastic thing to watch on Twitter for the Dota community, of how their talent has to deal with it. So
I'm very disconnected from any other community. I don't know how Dota International was picked. I know
it's a very big deal about who gets invited, who doesn't get invited, and their community makes it very big. Almost Illuminati level of who doesn't get put onto the broadcast for that.
Well, they picked 25 people too.
If you can cast your mind back to when StarCraft started, though, I feel like that's what it was back in 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
Right. If you think back, like it was like that, and I think that a lot of that has to do with not because they think it's an Illuminati thing. I think it's just because the game's bigger and has a bigger community, so it comes across that way as someone on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the international is a really, really big tournament, and they probably get paid really well, so it's exciting in that regard.
We kind of had that for BlizzCon. The last time we had it was BlizzCon when In Control wasn't invited. I don't remember what year that was. That was the last time I remember someone being like, well, wasn't he a shoo-in for BlizzCon? Like, what's going on here? And
yeah,
that was the last time, because even In Control not being at Pyeongchang, I thought Pyeongchang was kind of weird. But even the community was like, oh, we still got like 7 other really great guys. So that was that one BlizzCon where the last time I ever heard someone be like, what the fuck? Like, this is, Reddit threads were made, tweets were made, In Control had to be dodging questions left and right.
Like, what's going on? Did they get you? Did they?
You got caught.
So yeah. Okay. So this has definitely been one of our longer conversations. But I love the back and forth, and thank you very much, guys, for helping us get behind the curtain of what it takes to kind of become that commentator. In terms of a shout out, I'll do the missing Feardragon, because he ducked out. We did mention that he just ducked out. So Feardragon on everything that I think that is internet related. ZombieGrub, where can people find you, and where would you like to shout out?
Follow me on Twitter at CG Gaming, and Twitch and YouTube are both ZombieGrub. I'll be streaming tomorrow, starting at 11 Eastern time. And the Banshee tournament is this Saturday as well at 12 p.m. Eastern time.
Excellent.
Maynarde.
My man. I think it's at Feardragon 64 for
64.
There's a number again there.
Yes. Oh my god, the number.
I'm just helping you out, buddy. I got your back. So with me, I'm at Maynarde SC2 on Twitter. I am /Maynarde on /Maynarde SC2 on YouTube, where I have a video that I'm working on very soon, which I'm very, very excited to release. And I'm Twitch TV /Maynarde, no SC2 at the end, just Twitch TV Maynarde on Twitch, where I stream nearly every day, but I'm not going to today because I have a bit of a swollen throat. So I don't think I'll be able to have a stream in me today, unfortunately. But I do want to have one more thing to say before we close the call. Is that anyone that's out there that's listening to this episode, whether, I don't know if you put it on YouTube or maybe on Twitch VOD or whatever, or however many, wherever people generally grab the content here from ESChamp. If you want to be a commentator, don't try to be someone else. Be yourself. Play on your own strengths. Like, as much as ZombieGrub probably would love to be tasteless, put on a beard and all of a sudden get a growly voice and be really loud and be that hype guy. She's playing to her strengths. She is being herself when she commentates. It is very much who she is, but just with a little bit of extra excitement. Just do that as well. Like, don't try and be anyone. Have your own brand. Play on your strengths. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback, even though we said that there's, it's very hard to give good feedback. Don't be afraid to ask for it, as we will, if we do feel like giving feedback, we're generally going to be all right at giving it. So don't be afraid. And also don't, make sure that you put your name out there. Like Feardragon touched on it. We don't look for new commentators. We don't look for them. Blizzard don't look for them. It's only if they get told, and they won't know if you don't put your hand up. So try and work on your craft. If you really, really want to be a commentator, do it for the passion. Be yourself. Don't do it for money. and keep at it, don't stop, and that's it.
Perfect advice, absolutely. And to that point, if you remember what Feardragon had brought out, the idea of creating your own goals instead of trying to, pigeonhole yourself into what someone else is.
Don't try to be someone else, because we already have that person. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That niche, your niche, your niche cast or your niche style. All right, absolutely. All right, guys, this was episode number 9 of Casting in StarCraft of Inside the Scene. Endersword, my fantastic co-host, where can they find you?
You can find me at Endersword on Twitter, and here, as well as here tomorrow for the ProBots tournament. I'm not good enough. Yeah, I'm not good enough to do WCS casting, so I cast computers, just AIs. That's enough for me. So check that out. It's been going pretty well this season. And if you're in the Toronto area, we are doing a Barcraft at the Hive on Sunday to watch
the Super Tournament.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So that's from 12 to 6. So if you're around, come out to that. We would love to see you.
Yep. And the last thing too, as well, if you are in the Burbank area, we're hosting just me going out there to host a little Barcraft for the WCS Global Finals. So that's happening on, is it 20? I should have had that written down, but the 24th, 25th? 24th,
24th is when it starts. So, yeah.
That would be the 26th, 27th. So 27th, 28th. Wow, that was bad. I had it written down. 27th, 28th at Simsies. So that's that. ProBots tomorrow. And you can find me. Everything ESChamp, usually Twitter, Instagram. Instagram is ESChamp GG. That's where my social voice. But if you want to see random meme videos or photos of me doing my adventures as I travel, Drexama on Instagram. All right. Until next time, everybody, though, thanks for checking out our show. And we'll see you at episode 10 of Inside the Scene.